They were a band built on crackling tunes during outrageous times.
Alcohol, condoms, KY jelly.
It was like non-stop, completely non-stop.
They were a party band. They liked a good time all the time.
The cult won legions of followers with the crunching chords of guitarist Billy Duffy and the mystical allure of frontman Ian Astbury.
I'm gobbing off about poets and Native Americans and shamanism.
He's got bells on his feet with moccasins, and we're like, who's this guy?
In the late 80s, the cult became arena gods, only to be threatened by a schism from within.
It was very much like, we need to get the band bigger, and Ian wasn't so comfortable with that.
I'm 30 pounds overweight. I'm miserable. I've gone so far from the person that I thought I was.
The more devotees the cult received at their sonic temple, the unhappier their lead singer got.
I was becoming totally unmanageable. I mean, I definitely got lost in the whole circus.
I just think something inside him snapped.
He came in like a tornado. Everything was being broken, pictures off the wall.
Now enter a world of musical worship and woe.
Everyone is looking at me going like, the nutter has finally gone over the top.
The cult, the story behind the music.
Come on, buddy. Thank you so much. Step on back.
More than 2 decades after their formation, the cult's rock and roll sermons are as powerful as ever.
Probably the Cult was one of the last rock and roll bands that went out and had real fun on the road. And that's something that will never leave them.
As long as a band is creating good music and putting on a good live show, then they're happy.
The energy that sustains the cult lies in the unusual bond between 2 very different men, frontman Ian Astbury and guitarist Billy Duffy.
I thought we complemented each other well. I thought we were 2 halves of a whole.
Billy's just a straight-up rock and roll guy. You know, he likes to play his guitar and get laid. Ian's kind of off in his own world. I consider him the mystery man, you know.
I think that balance between the sort of mystical interest and the sort of pragmatic rocking powerhouse really is a really great combination.
With his talent for tune-making, Billy supplies the band's infectious licks, leaving Ian to bring a cryptic air to the cult's lyrics and onstage look. More interested in life's mysteries than in making money, Ian may be music's most misunderstood frontman.
There's always a mystique about him. I mean, Ian always had this aura that just made him mysterious. His mystique always fueled the cult.
I just wanted to find out what the truth was. Because I didn't believe the way that I'd been brought up that was the truth. I just felt there was another way to live.
Freedom is a vision!
Ian Astbury was born in May of 1962 into a working-class family in Merseyside, England. His father, Robert, was a merchant seaman who hit hard times soon after Ian was born.
Originally, we had a quite nice little house, but my father's business went bust, and, you know, unemployment came up in the early 70s in Britain. It was pretty heavy. So the family was quite, you know, modest.
For most of Ian's childhood, Robert Asbury kept the family on the move in search of work. One of the few constants in Ian's life was the rigid discipline of the schools he attended.
You used to get hit. I got belted, I got caned at school, corporal punishment. We were bullied and terrorized because we constantly moved. So we're always like the new kids at school.
By the time he was 8, Ian burned with resentment against authority and the hardships he and his family suffered every day.
I didn't believe what was being taught at school. I didn't believe that myself and my family should be subjected to what we were subjected to because of social status.
Ian didn't find a place he felt he fit in until his family moved to Ontario, Canada in the fall of '73. There, Ian met 2 Native American kids belonging to the Six Nations tribe. Invited to their reservation, Ian became fascinated with Native American culture and mythology.
They accepted me immediately, and I felt extremely accepted. So my love affair began with those people.
It's an intuitive spiritual thing, something of a warrior spirit, something brave and new. And I think that's why Ian adopted it the way that he did, why he felt so attached to it the way that he did.
From then on, Ian identified himself with outsiders. So in the summer of 1977, when punk rock seized control of the music scene back in England, he quickly took notice.
When the Sex Pistols album came out, Never Mind the Bollocks, he would have been about 15 at the time, and he actually asked for that as a Christmas present. And I think that made a real big difference to him.
The Pistols changed my life because that band spoke what was in my heart. And when I heard the Sex Pistols for the first time, that was it. I was like, I'm now a punk rocker straight away. Bang, 77.
At the age of 16, Ian quit school and moved back to England alone, scraping together a living with occasional odd jobs. Crashing in abandoned buildings with other young punk followers, he spent most of his time following hardcore bands.
It's basically, if you're a freak or you're an outsider, you're accepted. I was like us against the world, and it was just this incredible power. And there's this sentiment that was all around me. All the kids were feeling it, all the working class kids who had nowhere to go. The bands were so important.
In August of '81, a band called Violation was auditioning new lead singers and asked Ian to try out. It was a moment that would change Ian's life.
I obviously had a lot of anger inside of me. There was a lot in me. So when I hit that stage, it was an explosion. I just went nuts. I went insane. And all that energy, all that stuff that was in me as I was growing up, all came out in one thing.
I can remember standing off to the side of the stage. Ian jumped off the stage, grabbed the chair, hit a guy around his head, and got back on stage and finished the gig. And I was like, this guy's a lunatic.
She glances at her reflection.
Ian quickly took control of the group, renaming it Southern Death Cult, and hitting the stage dressed in Native American garb. It was a look that set him apart from the very beginning.
Let's screw loose somewhere.
The fashion in England at that time was kind of like a pseudo-rockabilly look with bleached hair and dyed black hair and, you know, and some gothic stuff. And then Ian just turned up looking like an American Indian with like pom-poms in his hair and the side of it shaved, and, you know, he'd have his nuts hanging out of his trousers. And everybody basically knew that Ian was going to be a huge star if he wanted to be.
People would meet Ian and then stop working and just follow him around. He just got that aura where people just go, oh, I love this band, I love Ian. I just want to follow him everywhere. And they did.
By 1982, Southern Death Cult had gained a zealous following on the punk scene. That spring, they toured with another popular punk band called Theater of Hate. quickly making an indelible impression on hit guitarist Billy Duffy.
The three guys in the band come on stage and they look kind of weird and they have this strange tribal kind of sound. No singer. And then suddenly this guy comes, dances across the stage. He's got bells on his feet and moccasins. And we were looking at each other, couldn't believe what we were seeing. We were like, who's this guy?
At 22, Billy Duffy was already a seasoned guitarist. A Manchester native, Duffy had been in punk bands called The Nosebleeds and Slaughter and the Dogs. He brought a unique edge to his axe work.
Even then, you could tell it was Billy when he started to play. He has his own style. I think all the great guitar players do.
When the tour was over, Billy and Ian Astbury went their separate ways, and Southern Death Cult continued on a fast track to success. In November of '82, the group signed with indie label Beggar's Banquet and put out a hit single called Fat Man. Impressed, CBS Records offered them their first major label deal.
In 1983, we were the it band in Britain. And I was the focal point of the whole thing. So I started to feel some kind of pressure with that. But I thought, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to make music for the rest of my life. If I sign that deal and stay with these guys, it's going to last 6 months, which is going to be too much too soon.
And Ian decided he was going to quit the band, and that was, for me, it was a total shock, and I couldn't understand why he was doing it.
Next thing I know, Ian comes down with a plastic, kind of a grocery bag, with a few things in it, and he goes, I've left Southern Death Cult. Do you want to form a group? And that's how we started.
Ian Astbury had taken the hard road by starting a new band with Billy Duffy. It wouldn't be the last time he turned away from success. Next, the Cult's rocky start.
He pinned me up against the wall by my throat and said, if a mic ever falls on the drum kit again, I'll kill you.
And later, doubts of a feathered frontman.
I thought I was so bad at what I did. I wanted to go kill myself.
When Behind the Music continues. In the spring of 1983, former rivals Ian Astbury and Billy Duffy formed a new punk group called Death Cult. But with punk on the wane, they soon shortened their name to The Cult and embraced a style more rooted in mainstream rock.
The Cult came in a time where they were kind of doing their own thing. There wasn't really a scene there for them to be a part of, so they kind of created their own.
My vision was to take the band to the next level, and that was the beginning of like the classic rock tradition of the Cult.
After a flurry of failed lineups, bassist Jamie Stewart and drummer Nigel Preston were recruited to round out the Cult's roster. It was a volatile mix from the start.
I was the shy, retiring, kind of nervous type. And Nigel was the big party animal and let's go out and do some drugs. He was the only person I ever came close to smashing a bottle over his head.
He was just always very, very hyper and very intense. I mean, it's hard to imagine a hyperactive heroin addict, but he was that, you know. I can remember one gig in particular at Nottingham Rock City where a microphone fell onto his drum kit. And after the show, he pinned me up against the wall by my throat and said, if a mic ever falls on the drum kit again, I'll kill you.
Despite the turmoil, the group quickly signed with Southern Death Cult's old label, Beggar's Banquet. And in September '84, the Cult released their debut album. Dreamtime spawned an underground hit with Spirit Walker, and Ian continued to put audiences under his spell.
You couldn't go to a Cult show and not have women squealing all around you. He had a stage presence that reminded a lot of people of Jim Morrison.
The thing about being on stage is that you've got to make it so the girls want to you and the guys want to be you. And half the time I think the guys want to him as well because he's so sexy on stage.
But many music critics didn't see Ian as sexy. They saw him as a fraud, questioning the sincerity of his mystical bent and the Native American references in songs like Horse Nation.
A horse nation, see them prancing, laying naked.
I used to get ridiculed, laughed at, whatever. That was cool, I didn't mind. You know, it was just like sort of straight culture, not being able to understand it or accept it.
It was quite horrific, questioning the validity of what he had to say and whether he was a fake. And I mean, it got quite personal and pretty nasty.
By the summer of '85, critics weren't the only ones questioning the band's direction. After supporting the Cult and its earlier incarnations for years, Beggar's Banquet was chomping to feast on a major hit.
We were just a regular band on the road, making records and not having a hit. And the pressure started going like, you guys need to produce.
Up against the wall, Billy and Ian came up with a signature song for the Cult. Released in the summer of '85, She Sells Sanctuary was the perfect fusion of music and mysticism. And it quickly became a radio sensation in the UK.
Sanctuary was massive. You know, I mean, even people in this country who don't like rock music, if they hear Sanctuary, they sort of like rock music for 4 minutes. It's become sort of a classic, really.
Flush with success, the band quickly released their second album, Love. Rising to number 4 on the British charts in the fall of '85, the record greatly expanded the Cult's congregation.
We were selling out every gig we did in England. It was one of my happiest times of my life was doing the tour that we did on the Love album. We were very much all kind of one gang together, you know, at that point.
We had some money in our pockets for the first time in our lives. We weren't wealthy by modern standards, but you know, we could buy our own drinks and stuff, which was great. And socks.
The group made plans to record their first major video for She Sells Sanctuary. But on the day of the shoot, mercurial drummer Nigel Preston was nowhere to be found.
Nigel had got himself in some trouble, as Nigel always did, and was locked up that night. I think he was driving a car that wasn't technically his without a license because he couldn't drive properly, and he was, you know, it was all bad.
Nigel just didn't show up at all. You know, and then a phone call happens and, you know, your drummer's in prison.
On the spur of the moment, the Cult were able to get big country drummer Mark Brzezicki to sit in on the video. But they knew they faced a tough decision about Nigel's future with the band.
So when I'd sit down with Nigel and say to him, we can't have you in the band anymore, you're too much liability because you're a heroin addict. That was heartbreaking. And I was crying more than he was during the thing. They were consoling me.
And Nigel's departure wasn't the only thing troubling Ian. So, ironically, was the Cult's growing success.
At that point, that was the first real big taste of big celebrity I'd ever had, and that kind of freaked me out quite a lot.
Being a big pop star never seemed quite so important to Ian. That was the vehicle for him to experience other cultures, make friends in other places.
It was almost like he didn't want to turn and embrace the success that they were getting. It was a situation where the success was there, but he didn't want to have it change him. And it was almost like he went more and more into a shell the more popular the band got.
When the Cult completed their tour in the winter of '85, most of the band was in the mood to celebrate, but not Ian.
Smashed up the hotel room and then left a note saying, I'm gone. Got on a train, I woke up on a train pulling into London. I was 250 miles away from the city of Carlisle, where I'd just been. And I had a knife and a pistol, like a replica pistol, in a plastic bag with a load of beer. And I sort of woke up and went, oh dear.
The incident was quickly forgotten, but as time went on, Ian's demons would catch up to the Cult. Next, life on the road.
I'm just like jumping on the bed and there's glass everywhere and just going crazy.
Then he drops his drawers and he's gonna do something nasty.
And later, a prank pushes the Cult apart.
To be in the center of that was pretty painful. That's pretty vicious and cruel.
when Behind the Music continues.
There's a revolution. There's a revolution, yeah.
2 records into their career, the Cult seemed on the verge of stardom, but they still weren't satisfied with their sound. So in the summer of '86, the group went to New York, where producer Rick Rubin was asked to bring a harder edge to their next album.
He sort of sits there and nods his head and says, "So, you guys don't want to play any more of that English music, do you?" And we're like, "So you want to rock, right?" We're like, "Can you show us how to do it?" He went like, "Follow me." So he kind of helped to liberate where we wanted to go.
It was really quite a radical departure from the Love album. You know, we went very rock. We wanted to make like a really bold statement.
Released in April '87, Electric sent a jolt through the music scene. With a top 20 hit in Love Removal Machine, the Platinum album gave the Cult a new reputation as heavy metal heroes.
This was the album that really made them start to become a worldwide presence rather than just like a UK phenomenon. You've got a band that found their sound.
In the fall of '87, the Cult began a triumphant world tour, hitting the road with only one rigid rule: no drugs.
Alcohol, condoms, KY jelly, everything else, but not drugs. And that was really unusual, and it was great.
The Cult may have rejected drugs, but they had no qualms about drinking, and the party started as soon as they hit the stage.
I used to put the band's drinks out on stage, and it was always Bacardi and Coke for Billy and 4 bottles of wine for Ian, which he'd do in an hour and 10-minute set. He'd do all 4 bottles of wine. They were a party band. They liked a good time all the time, as they say in Spinal Tap.
It was like non-stop, completely non-stop. I think that at that time you don't realise that there's a potential for a problem, and everybody was just having a really good time.
But for Ian Astbury, things weren't always that simple. During one tour stop in coastal Italy, his drinking dissolved into a session of self-doubt.
I thought I was so bad at what I did, I wanted to go kill myself. So I took all my lyrics I had at the time, just ripped them all up and just, it's not good enough. I had a mad little artistic temper tantrum.
Well, all I remember is the security guy coming and banging on my door at about 3 o'clock in the morning, and he says, "You gotta come, Tim, you gotta come. Ian's trying to kill himself. He was doing handstands on the balcony of the hotel, and now he's run off and swam out to sea with just a pair of cowboy boots on."
He ran out to the ocean and dragged me back, coaxed me back. "Look, I've got something to drink. Come back." "Okay, I'll do it tomorrow."
In the fall of '88, the Cult returned to the studio. Intent on making the group's 4th album a smash, Billy Duffy insisted on a rigid production schedule and a slick song list.
I was very much like, we need to get the band bigger and make it, maybe a bit more commercial, and Ian wasn't so comfortable with that.
It was becoming everything I didn't want us to be. It was becoming like a commercially driven entity. And I just hated being confined and being told what to do, when to do it, and how to do it.
In the end, Billy got his way, and Sonic Temple, released in April '89, quickly enjoyed massive success, becoming a top 10 American smash within weeks.
It was a classic alternative rock album, almost probably the classic alternative rock album. The one that really cracked it for them in America.
But not everyone was paying homage to Sonic Temple. Ian Astbury felt that some of the cuts on the album were consciously commercial and a betrayal of his punk past.
I wasn't entirely happy with Sonic Temple, to say the least. I thought we'd sold out. I was still trying to retain some element of, I guess, our roots, you know. That was a very painful record for me to make.
I think Ian felt a little manipulated, and I think he reacted subsequently on the road by not maybe taking the best care of himself and not really fulfilling his potential. That's when I did get pissed.
As the cult hit the road in support of Sonic Temple, new drummer Matt Sorum witnessed Ian's drinking demons firsthand.
I was told at the beginning of the tour, when Ian was up late and drinking, and he comes knocking at your door, 2 or 3 a.m., don't answer.
We were all drinking a lot, but Ian was really drinking.
And I'm getting, go away. 3 or 4 doors, go away, leave us alone. Go away, go to bed.
Or something, new guy. I don't want to befriend this dude. I want to be his buddy. So I let Ian in my room when I was told not to. And he came in like a tornado and went straight for my furniture, my lamps. Everything was being broken, pictures off the wall.
So I'm just like jumping on the bed and there's glass everywhere and just going crazy.
Then he drops his drawers. You know, he's got his pants down to his knees and he's gonna do something nasty. So I run down the hall, I get the fire extinguisher, right? I got the fire extinguisher. I run back in the room and I spray him with the fire extinguisher. Just nail him with the thing and it's white powder everywhere.
And the powder set off the sprinklers, and the alarm went off on the floor, and then it's 4 in the morning, so the hotel's empty. So I just start packing my clothes, because I know we're getting kicked out of the hotel.
The cult quickly paid the hotel for the damages, but they faced a larger problem in Ian's growing estrangement from the rest of the band.
I'm gobbing off about poets and Native Americans and shamanism and, you know, what Jim Morrison had for breakfast. And everyone else is like, he's cracked. Kid's cracked.
He got very difficult to talk to in normal everyday terms. And Billy was trying to make the best of a rock and roll career. And the two personalities just didn't get on at the time.
By the fall of '89, Billy and Ian were barely speaking. Instead, Ian was spending virtually all his time with Renee Beach, a Canadian hairdresser that he cast in the Cult's video for the song Edie.
Renee was very proper, very prim and proper girl. I thought she was just like a spirited person or an outcast as well.
He picked up with a girl who then became his 24 hours a day companion.
She was never not there. Never. Ever. Not there. Ever.
At one point it was a bunch of guys together who all had girlfriends who used to come and visit. Then it's a bunch of guys plus the singer who's with his girlfriend 24 hours a day, and it's a different energy. It's just totally different.
The more successful the Cult got, the more Ian seemed to distance himself from the group. Next, a watery gag divides the band.
Matt Sorum jumped off his drum rise and started stamping on the fish and eating them, and the whole place was in chaos.
And later, Ian flees the Cult.
I just think something inside him snapped. He just was like, I'm done with this.
When Behind the Music continues. In the spring of 1989, the album Sonic Temple was being hailed as the Cult's classic. The group had become an arena rock hit, and lead singer Ian Astbury had never been more miserable in his life.
At that point, I was becoming totally unmanageable. I mean, I definitely got lost in the whole circus. I'm 30 pounds overweight. I'm miserable. I've gone so far from the person that I thought I was, this idealistic punk rocker. I've become like this sort of like quasi-pseudo sex symbol, gothic rock, Jim Morrison-esque, you know, Frankenstein's monster thing.
As the Cult continued to tour, Ian became increasingly withdrawn, spending almost all his time with his girlfriend, Renee.
There were two camps within the band. There was the Ian and Renee camp, and then there was the Billy camp. And it was always a bit of a struggle.
In the summer of '89, the Cult were playing a gig in Allentown, Pennsylvania, when someone threw a live goldfish on the stage. Renee quickly ran to the rescue.
Ian's girlfriend at the time runs on, saves the fish. They become like the tour pet.
As the tour continued, the incident became infamous. At a gig in Seattle, a group the Cult was performing with decided to bait Ian and Renee with a prank.
They went out and bought every fish in Seattle and climbed up in our lighting rig, and at the last song, dumped the fish on stage.
We're talking dozens of fish, and they're just raining down, flapping. So this is like that video, Bad Faith No More. Pretty ugly, actually.
Matt saw him, jumped off his drum rise and started stamping on the fish and eating them, and Renee ran out from stage right with a Gatorade jar trying to rescue them, and the whole place was in chaos.
Get off the stage, you big bastard! This is our
To be in the centre of that was pretty painful. That's pretty vicious and cruel. I joined a band to get away from people like that. I just felt more apart from everybody. It just pushed me further away from the whole thing.
In June of '89, in a search for solace, Ian traveled to a Sioux Indian reservation outside Rapid City, South Dakota. There he met a tribal elder, and the two struck up a conversation.
He said, "What are you doing?" And I went, "Well, I used to." And it hit me. I said, "I'm doing nothing, man. I'm just getting drunk. I ain't doing nothing." And he went, "Sounds like, you know, you got some things to work out." And we had this, like, summit. And I felt reborn. All of a sudden, I was reconnected with that original energy.
Within weeks, Ian was off the road for the first time in years and realizing that it was time for a change.
I remember being in my dad's house one night, and I was drunk in his house, and he was sick, he was dying of cancer, and I felt disgusted with myself. I thought, I can't be like this, my father's dying. All my relationships were in shreds, they were all tarnished, so I thought, right, stop drinking. I didn't go to AA, didn't do anything, I just stopped. Didn't want to drink, that was it.
Ian's newfound sobriety didn't solve the problems within the Cult. In the summer of 1990, the tension within the band was still so great that longtime bassist Jamie Stewart decided to quit.
It seemed like a strange time to leave when things were still going up. But I'd got sick of Ian and Billy not talking to each other. It got to be pretty depressing, really.
Soon afterwards, Matt Sorum also quit, becoming the new drummer for Guns N' Roses. Reduced to a core of two, Ian and Billy began working on the album Ceremony, but they spent more time wrangling than writing.
I drank a river in my time just to get on through.
I couldn't really see the logic in changing our style. The Ceremony album became kind of a negative effect of a tug-of-war between me and Ian, and nothing happened. It was just down the middle. Neither of us got what we wanted.
To the heart of soul, you got to bleed a little while you sing.
You could hear that there was an Ian direction on the record and there was a Billy direction on the record, and they weren't resolving the direction between themselves.
Ceremony was not only a commercial disaster, but the subject of a major legal dispute. The Cult had used a photo of a 4-year-old Sioux Indian boy named Eternity Dubray on the album cover and in the video for the song Wild Hearted Son. In the spring of '92, the boy's family sued, claiming the photograph was used without permission and displayed great insensitivity to Native American culture.
It was a shame for Ian, because the last thing he wanted to do was hurt any Indian tribes, people, or culture, because he was really committed to it. And he ended up being seen as the bad guy, when in fact it was completely the opposite.
In an out-of-court settlement, the Cult were allowed to keep using the photo, but Ian's anguish lingered for months.
It was like a great amount of emotional pain and distress during that. Nothing hurts worse, I think, for any artist, for somebody, some little egghead to come along and say, you're inauthentic. You know, that's like a knife straight to the heart.
In the summer of '92, the Cult received another unexpected blow. Word arrived that their friend and former drummer, Nigel Preston, had died of a heroin overdose. He was only 31 years old.
I loved him. He's my buddy. I still think about him a lot. It's like one of them things, woulda, coulda, shoulda, wish I could have said something, wish I could have helped him with his addiction, wish I could have been there for him.
For a time, Ian wasn't even sure the cult should continue. Then in February '93, the greatest hits album, Pure Cult, was released and shot to #1 on the British charts. Billy and Ian decided to regroup and open for Metallica during a 3-month tour. But the metal mix proved a bad one.
You'd have these just hardcore fans in the front who just didn't want to see anything but Metallica. And then here we come.
We're getting beer cans and coins thrown at us every night. They're just kind of shouting and screaming abuse at us.
I got hit with something and I didn't know what it was, and my arm was all wet. And I asked the bass player, I go, what is that? Oh, that was a bag of piss.
Urine, poo. Somebody threw a pig's head on stage once. I think it might have been Chicago.
I mean, honestly, after that thing, I thought for sure they were going to break up. I almost felt like I was putting a nail in the coffin because nerves were frayed and tensions were high.
In October of '94, the Cult released their self-titled 6th album, but it sank without a trace. As the band hit the road to tour, Ian began drinking again after almost 3 years of sobriety. And in March of '95, after a concert in Brazil, everything fell to pieces.
I don't think I could handle the pressure anymore of it. It was just, I was burnt out. I was spiritually, physically exhausted, and I just wanted to break.
I just think something inside him snapped. He just was like, I'm done with this.
I was drunk and emotional one night, and, you know, it was basically sort of like a, you know, like a cat fight.
Suddenly Ian just went mad, you know. Punched me, kicked somebody else, threw a couple of tables over. I said, that's it, I've had enough. Bastards, you know. And we thought he was like, you know, we'll be fine, we'll let him have a bit of time to himself. And got up the next morning, he'd gone. And that was it.
Next, a deadly scare, and the Cult reborn.
My life kind of passed before my eyes. And I thought, if I get out of this, I'm going to do something with myself.
When Behind the Music continues. After years of building tensions, frontman Ian Astbury finally quit the Cult in the spring of 1995. After leaving the group in mid-tour, he returned home and destroyed everything bonding him to the band.
We took all my platinum discs and everything out, and we just had a big barbecue. Set it all on fire. Melted platinum discs, gold discs, just everything demolished. Threw it all on there, didn't want anything to do with it. Hated it all.
Ian shed the glitz and glam of arena rock and returned to his rugged roots. Only 6 weeks after abandoning the Cult, he formed a garage band with friends called the Holy Barbarians.
We didn't set out to set the world on fire. We traveled around in a van, we didn't care. I had nobody tell me what to do, what not to do. It was insane.
While Ian relished his independence, Billy returned to his hometown of Manchester, England. Having quit drinking, he took stock of his life and his past.
I just had a hard look in the mirror. For me, it was personally really, really good, but it was kind of a cathartic moment.
I saw a lot of Billy at that time, and he was doing a lot of walking in the mountains and a lot of camping. I guess he was doing a lot of soul searching.
For several years, Ian and Billy barely spoke. Ian spent much of his time fulfilling spiritual pursuits. Interested in Buddhism, he decided to join a group trek in the mountains of Tibet in the spring of 1998. But soon after he arrived, the trip turned deadly.
There was a storm front moving in, so it was like almost this icy rain coming in, blackout, you couldn't see anything. And the truck couldn't go any further, so we had to walk 8 kilometers through snow, sometimes up to the waist deep. We were totally disorientated, we had altitude sickness, incredible headache.
As the storm intensified, Ian found himself struggling to keep himself and others alive.
And we started to carry these people and drag them. And my life kind of passed before my eyes. And it was sort of like this regrets coming up about things I wish I'd done and people I wish I'd said something to, like maybe Nigel, or, you know, things I wanted to say to Billy. And I thought, if I get out of this, I'm going to do something with myself.
Ian and his group had nearly lost hope when they stumbled upon a small Tibetan hamlet. Embraced by the villagers, Ian felt he had been given a new lease on life and found himself ready to embrace everything he'd left behind.
When I came back, from there was this kind of burning desire to get back into the mainstream again, to get busy, to get up front with something that was very serious. And that's when I started to reach out towards Billy, and we found ourselves in March 1999 talking about putting the cult back together again.
I mean, you know, within 5 minutes we're scheming. It was very emotional, like, right then, rolled our sleeves up and we got into it. How are we going to do it? What are we going to do? Just the two of us again, it was great.
Within months, the Cult were on the road again, and in June 2001, they released their first new album in 7 years. Critics describe Beyond Good and Evil as a record shaking with vitality.
It was everything anyone could expect from a comeback record for them. The Cult never lost their credibility, and that makes them extremely viable with today's young audience, because there's something cool about listening to them.
Thank you. This is the Love Removal Machine!
Reborn and revitalized nearly 20 years after they began, the Cult seemed ready to create a new history for themselves, stronger together than they ever were apart.
Felt your retro, because she was there. Wow, yeah, baby!
As long as Ian Astbury wants to make music with me, then I'll always be there to make music with him, you know, because I love it.
As for Ian Astbury, it has taken a lifetime of searching, but he finally seems comfortable with his calling.
Music and creativity is so incredibly precious to me that in the future I intend to treat it with that kind of respect that it deserves, because the people around me that I love and care for have all had to make sacrifices being around me. So the book's still open.
If you missed the Cult behind the music, see it at 8/7 Central. But now, it's VH1's 10 Years That Rocked the World. Follow along at VH1.com on the interactive timeline, The Home Game.